Over the years, I've gotten the question from many people as to why people harass me and which person has probably been the most harassing. I've generally refrained from talking about this stuff because usually what happens is the people who are the biggest harassers are those who are the people who would try to sue you if you stated what they were really doing. There are many people in my personal life, in my professional life, and on my online and artistic life that have done that. But I want to talk about one because in recently doing another Ask Dan Schneider, I looked up the name of someone and I found out that this person had died earlier this year in 2015. His name was Bob Grumman, and he was a poet that was actually born 24 years earlier than me, February 2nd, 1941 versus my 65, and he died in April of 2015 apparently. He had back around late '01, after about 6, 7, 8 months of Cosmoetica being online, he proceeded to spend the next 3 to 4 years harassing me. He found out about Cosmoetica through its building success and the fact that I was getting a lot of people reading it, and my uh, uh, this old poem essays were starting to get popular. And he was someone who had no real writing talent. He wrote what he called mathemacous, but they weren't really mathemacous. They weren't mathematical poems. What he would do is he would take these so-called mathematical poems and try to use mathematical symbols with words. Just Googling some of his stuff, I'm looking on a page here, a mathematical for Macbeth. It basically is life divided by sound equals fury. Now, here's the thing, the sound and the fury is already a cliche, and he's taken a cliche and he thinks just by putting a mathematical symbol between the words, it lessens the cliche. And this is one of the things that goes to the key of that he was one of these people who had no real creativity. What he was someone who was mentally ill, and this is an important point to make because when I ran my Uptown Poetry group, I often had people who were highly sensitive but were mentally disturbed in some fashion who would come to the group and they would try to claim that their writing was really creative when it was really just expressing their illness. To give another example, let me quote Mathemaku number one. This is from Bob Grumman. It says, outside, comma, cold rain maps a deep night's constants around a couple to the power of zero. Now, he has cold rain, a deep night. So already, even in this supposed uh, new form, he's already killed it with two deadly cliches. And all of his poetry, or attempts at poetry, had this. He didn't have an original thought in his mind. And this is a man who, for about 3 years, had harassed me. And I detailed this in some of my good faith stupidity and the internet essays and some of the stuff that came before that, with emails where I basically had to destroy him. He was, again, I think is maybe because he was fixated on me because we had the same birth date. But for whatever reason, he fixated on me and he would send me all of these harassing emails for years. I deleted most of them. And as I said, this was from maybe '01 to '04. So this was several ISPs ago that he did it. But uh, he did a few online rants, it looks like, in some videos. There were a few people. There was a guy on my Cosmoetica E-list for a while named Carl Kempton, who apparently was pals with him. Um, there was another fellow whose name slips my mind. But Grumman himself was a really sort of pathetic figure. In his emails to me, and again, I don't know if this was true or not, I remember he was very lonely. I don't think he ever married. So he lived his 74 years in total aloneness. And I know a lot of the emails that he sent me went way beyond uh, the poetry stuff. He wrote about me on a blog he has, which I think was taken offline some years ago. Maybe it's still around somewhere, but not its original website. But he would harass me. When I say harass, not necessarily violently, but write to me when I told him we have nothing to talk about. You don't have any talent. And he so desperately sought out my approval because at some level he knew I was a great poet and he knew that he wasn't even really a poet. And if you want proof of that statement, here's Mathemaku number 6, A. Parenthetical dawn, parenthetical knapsacks plus raft plus island equals 4 divided by 3 pi, parenthetical boyhood cubed. Now, this is a perfect example of gimmick art, something that I've railed against. Here, Grumman wants people to think there's some hidden depth in that, but there isn't. What he basically does is make a cliche out of the equal sign. There's nothing here, what is boyhood cubed? But not just boyhood cubed, but parenthetical boyhood. What is the purpose of the parentheses? It's even serving as a mathematically times 4/3 to the pi. It doesn't make any sense. And so you end up with these rants that have no sense, but it's someone trying to sound like they were Buddha, trying to sound like they're deep, when in reality he wasn't. Bob Grumman was really just a lonely man who lived a lonely life, and in a sense I feel sorry and pity for him. But that should not detract from the fact that what he did and the way he acted was not the way people should. He was someone who had a lot of problems, and I'm looking at Mathemaku for Carl Kempton, which is psyche divided by crow, or crow divided by psyche times pi equals laughter, but laughter is misspelled, divided with a divisor between it. What that is supposed to mean? It means nothing. It means that in a fractured, poor man's mind, it had some meaning, but it really didn't have meaning. And it not only degraded himself, but it degraded art. This is the kind of art that especially when you deal with poetry, that poets have to deal with the condemnation of others, because he was someone who was mentally ill, trying to pass himself off as an artist, but in reality, he just manifested his mental illness even more. And that's the sad thing. But yet it affects me, it affects other artists. When we say we're poets and someone writes a great poem, people will look at someone like, or the poetry of a Grumman, and say, you're like him? No, we're actual real poets. We're great poets, if that person really is. But this is the kind of thing you have to deal with the degradation of art over the last X amount of years, few decades. I didn't wish Bob Grumman any ill, but again, he was a man who probably should have given up the ghost a long time ago. Hopefully, if there is any kind of afterlife, he has some peace, because he had no peace, he had no joy, he had nothing really in this life. Maybe if there is a next one, he'll get it.